Hi guys, my name's Chima, and this is our second episode where we're going to be diving into mindset and motivation. So with me today is Chris. Chris is the managing director at Flambard Williams and alongside some other companies as well. So Chris works a lot with top performing sports athletes, large CEOs across the country. And so we just wanted to, again, pick his brain and talk a bit more about mindset and motivation. So Chris, why don't we start off by...
Dive straight in, Tima. How are we doing?
Yeah,
you
really good. Are you doing all right?
Yeah, not bad.
Welcome back for episode 2.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Amazing.
it.
So for today's question, I want to start off by saying, how would you define motivation?
Oh, that's a good question. So for me, motivation is the key driver in anyone's ability to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to succeed without motivation. You can have as much talent as you want. If you don't have motivation to drive that talent, you might as well forget it. Might as well give up straight away. But in terms of staying motivated, because that's the key, because you're going to have waves, you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. The key for me is staying motivated. Anyone can get motivated.
Yeah.
When they get an idea, right? How many times do people set up businesses? Oh, I'm so excited about this business, only to fail. And I can't remember the exact stat, but I think if half of businesses fail within their first 3 years, 65% of businesses fail after 10 years. So the reality is people don't stay motivated or they don't adapt.
Yeah.
But to stay motivated, you've got to do small increments. You can't set up a business or you can't be a sports person and think of the end goal and only ever think of the end goal. You've got to think of the end goal first. So for me, that's key. You think of the end goal and then you work backwards. So I always start at the end, work backwards, and then literally in bite-sized chunks. So let's say that you're going to run a 100-kilometer race, like these huge Ironman races, and you go and run 100 kilometers. There's no way you can start off and in that first 5 minutes of you running, you're thinking about the 100th kilometer. Forget it. You're going to just pass out from.
I made that mistake doing my first half marathon.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to think, right, okay, small bite-sized chunks. What have I got to do? Let's get the first 5 kilometers out of the way. Let's forget about everything else. Let's get the first 5 out of the way, and then we see where we are.
Yeah.
And it's the same with a business. So for me, I knew where I wanted to be as a business. And when I work with top CEOs and sports stars, I say, look, where do you want to be first? That's the key. What do you want to do? And then let's work backwards from there. And then what actually happens is you break it down into bite-sized chunks that are manageable daily, so you can get motivated for bite-sized chunks because it's easy. And then the days suddenly turn into weeks, the weeks into months, months into years, and before you know it, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years have passed, and you've done everything it's done or everything it takes to get to the very top. So that's how you actually can stay motivated, by getting it down to bite-sized chunks.
Oh, okay, I like that. So it sounds like there's a bit of a structure there to get
100%.
for motivation.
It's just a pattern, and so many of the top CEOs and sports stars understand that it's just repeating patterns. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. People have done it before, so you just keep repeating patterns, and patterns will repeat itself, and you just simply jump onto the back of that.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, and it sounds like you need some level of push, which leads me to my next question. So would you say that it's an internal or external force that drives motivation?
Yeah, good question. Motivation is all internal. If you have to rely on external factors for motivation, again, forget it. It for me, that doesn't make sense. If you've got to, have other people motivate you, or you need it to be a sunny day to be motivated, or you need it to be bright to get up early, forget it. You should be able to motivate yourself to achieve what you need to achieve. And again, most of the top performers in any industry, they don't have anyone actually motivating them.
Yeah.
Sports stars that play individual sports, typically they have to motivate themselves. Whether that be athletics, whether that be in golf, they've got coaches. But your coach isn't going to force you to get out of bed every day. You've got to motivate yourself to get into your practice arena. The same with top CEOs. Typically, they've got to motivate hundreds of people below them. But there's no one motivating them. So being motivated is, for me, all internal.
Okay. So it's a big mental game, right? So
yeah.
Would you say that, there's a difference between discipline and motivation?
Yeah, there is. There's a big difference between motivation and discipline. So for me, motivation is the key that starts everything off. That's the key. You've got to be motivated to have the idea or be the person that you're going to be in the first place. Now, discipline is slightly different. So let's take a sports player.
Sure.
Let's take someone who is motivated to be an athlete, for example. Now, you may say, well, my motivation is to win a gold medal at the Olympics.
Okay.
No problem. That's your long-term motivation. You then break it down, like we said before, into small bite-sized chunks. So, okay, what do I need to do on a daily basis what do I need to eat on a daily basis, what do I need to do on my mental work on a daily basis, what do I need to do on my physical work on a daily basis to achieve that goal. And then, like I said before, the days become weeks, become months, become years.
Yeah.
But it's the discipline to do that every day that takes over the motivation. The motivation is still the same, it's to win a gold medal. But it's the discipline that takes over on the daily basis to just stick with it. And let's be realistic. There's no way that me, other CEOs, top sports stars have 100% motivation every single day. There are days when you think you could do without it.
Yeah.
But the discipline then takes over.
It kicks in, doesn't it?
You've got to force yourself. If you're in the habit of, you're on a health kick, you're going to the gym, it's the discipline of just turning up every day, even the days that you don't want to be going down the gym or the days that you don't want to go into work. It's those days and the discipline days which create the long-term goals and the success of the long-term goals.
Okay, so it's about consistency. So how do you know when your motivation is genuine or, just a temporary excitement period?
Okay, well, first of all, is you cannot fake motivation.
Okay.
Temporary excitement, you'll fail. If you're temporarily excited about an idea, or your excitement is all short term, then forget it. The motivation's going to go out the window. The discipline will go out the window. Why is it that so many people sign up to the gym in January? Right, they sign up to him in January. They go, this is going to be my year.
Yeah.
And then I've come February, forget it. They're back to not going to the gym, not being healthy.
Not me.
Yeah. And the reality is that because everyone starts off with all the best intentions, the temporary excitement, and then it wears off. But it's the people that, go right the way through. The biggest people who I see at the gym who are totally disciplined are the people that are in there in December. Because, it's so easy in December not to go to the gym, to go out. It's like in London, people are drinking, going out socially. But it's the people who are going down there in December who are literally starting. And the same when you have off-season in any sport, whether it be football, whether it be golf, the people that put in the work in the off-season and stick to the micro disciplines and keep the long-term motivation, they're the ones that succeed.
Fair enough. So it's more not just an emotional game, it's a mental game as well. So how would you say, or can motivation be influenced by emotions? And if so, how?
Yeah, motivation is totally influenced by emotions, but that's the downside. That's the biggest no, in my opinion, because and my wife sometimes calls me a bit, emotionless on this. But the reality is, and especially sports stars, because if you're in an individual sport, you've got no teammates to rely on. It's one of the toughest places out there in your field of work, and you're on your own. You've done all the work. If you're a boxer, you've done all the work in the gym. They say that the fight isn't won in the ring; it's won in the gym.
Yeah.
The same with golf. The same with athletics. The reality is that you need to basically stick to those particular disciplines.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to the emotional side of things, I just extract everything. There's no point in getting too excited about the highs, just as the same as there's no point in getting despondent about the lows, because if you think you're going to go through and do extremely well and have no lows, you're mistaken.
Yeah.
So I say to all CEOs, I tell myself every day, say, you know what, you're going to have bad days, but forget about it, the bad days, and you'll have good days, but don't get too high on the good days.
Of course.
Just take an average. And just say the reality is, if you just do the best you can every single day. Take golf, for example. The reality is you're going to get birdies, you're going to get bogeys. And what that basically...
Don't know what either are. But
basically, a birdie's a good thing, a bogey's not.
Okay.
That's the reality. But there's no point in getting excited about a birdie. Just the same, don't get negative about a bogey. If you just don't have any emotion out there and take each shot at a time, you've got a better chance of winning than if you've got emotion that's going into your next shot. And the same with sales. What do we say to the guys on the phone all the time? It's like, if you have a bad call, don't let that bad call go over to the next call, and then you've got two bad calls. Just the same as if you have a good call, don't think, I don't need to prepare. The second one's going to be great anyway.
Yeah.
You've got to just go, you know what? You reset, you prepare exactly the same thing for every single call. So you've got to just take the emotion out of it.
Okay, and that leads me into my next question. So what kind of activities would you do or say would be good to keep you energized and motivated?
Again, it comes back to the small increments. You've got to be energized with small wins.
Okay.
Doesn't matter whether you've got this long-term plan. You need to stay motivated with small wins. Let's just say that you're on a weight loss kick or you're on a health kick.
Sure.
And someone says, I've got to lose 2 stone. You're not going to lose that in any time soon. It's going to take you months potentially to lose that weight. So what happens is people give up because they think that they've got to lose 2 stone, for example. They then head down the gym, and after 3 weeks, they've lost 3 pounds.
Yeah.
And they think, it's going to take ages, and they focus on the 2 stone. What you've got to do is break it down, like we said, go back to, okay, how long is it going to take me to lose 2 stone? It might take 6 months to lose 2 stone. So what I'm going to do is break that into, how many pounds I'm going to lose, or kilos, depends what you're in, how many pounds I'm going to lose in per week, and then just stick to that. And goals can change. Move the goalpost. It's fine.
Yeah.
But just keep sticking to the short-term goals, which will keep it up for the long term.
Okay, I like that we keep bringing this back to the gym because I'm a massive gym goer. So this kind of is personal to me. But how would you say, Chris, you stay motivated when you're not necessarily passionate about something? You
can't. If you're not passionate about something, don't do it. That's the bottom line. There's we're not in years gone by where we were restricted by travel. So let's go 60, 70, 80 years ago. The reality is you probably went to school until you were 14, 60, 70 years ago, and you got a job as an apprentice in your local area.
Okay.
Very few people ventured out of their local area. Yeah. But we're not limited like that anymore. So you don't have to do a job, and you don't have to do something that you're not motivated by. You can't fake motivation. You can't fake excitement for too long.
Of course.
So my advice is do something you're passionate about. Forget the money side for the moment. It's better to have a job that pays less that you're really hungry and motivated by, because you could probably actually flip that into something that is financially viable down the line, rather than trying to go for the highly paid job where you've got no motivation at all. It's short term. It won't work.
Okay. I like that, actually. And it sounds to me that motivation is something that goes up and down, right? So how would you reignite motivation when it starts to fade?
Move the goalposts. Like I said, if you want to reignite motivation, don't be afraid of moving the goalposts. If you've set goals which are so ambitious, which are so far away, and it's really tough to break it down into small increments, and you find yourself struggling, get some shorter term goals and move the goalpost a little bit. I move the goalposts all the time. There's no problem as long as you're not moving the goalpost so much where you're just avoiding going for the goal. But the reality is just you can move the goalpost slightly to just realign and try and refocus, reset, and relight the fire.
Okay. I mean, we are talking massively on mindset today. So would you say that, your mindset is something that is fixed or something that you can change?
You can definitely change mindset. Mindset is typically wired. It's not hardwired. So mindset for me is one of the biggest factors in being successful. Yeah. You can have talent, you can have work ethic. If you have got the wrong mindset, forget it, you're not going to win. And especially when it comes to sports. If you've got a mindset that's weak or maybe too overbearing in terms of you blame yourself too much when things go wrong, you forget it, you're not going to win. So a lot of mindset work that I do with people that I work with, whether it be sports stars, whether it be CEOs, it actually stems way back. Their mind has been wired way back when they were younger. And I won't go into detail who this is, but someone that I work with, their mindset, they had such an amazing upbringing, unbelievable. Yeah. Nothing went wrong for them, because if it ever did, or if things were going to go wrong, mum and dad stepped in, or nan and granddad stepped in. So what happened is, because nothing went wrong for them, that's not real life. So when it come to actually performing and things went wrong or didn't go as well, they couldn't understand it. There was no one to step in. And it didn't make sense. Their brain couldn't compute why things were going wrong. Yeah. So what we had to understand first is that actually, how have you never experienced this in the first place? So we went through a lot of work on them knowing that actually things do go wrong. Yeah. We then brought that back to, okay, don't worry, things have gone wrong previously in your life, but let's see how I fixed it. Well, mum and dad aren't there to fix it now, so what are we going to do? And then, but we had to get rid of that first, because the instant reaction for them, their computer brain took over. Yeah. And the reason why we get wired like this is because the brain wants to do as many things on autopilot as possible, because it saves energy. It's very hard to think, we don't have to think how to breathe. We don't have to think how to walk. So our brain does the majority of things on autopilot. So new wires are created, new electrons are created. So the reality is what needs to happen is we need to break those cycles first, and we need to do small little habits to rewire it, to say, okay, when this happens, this is how we're going to react. Okay. Because it's wired to react in a certain way. And if that's negative to what we want to create, then the reality is we've got to rewire everything. But
training yourself, right?
100%. And you can definitely change mindset.
Amazing. So you, like Chris, we keep mentioning, not only do you kind of coach and work with a lot of sports stars and obviously sales brokers and, you know, your team. So what role would you say that your mindset has in overcoming challenges? Because whether you're in the sports ground or whether you're, you know, back at home in the office, there's always going to be challenges.
Yep, totally agree. So your mindset is key, as we've said, to anything and what you're going to achieve. So for me, if you're, I'll give you another example. This is someone in the workplace that I coached. They always thought that things were going to go wrong.
Okay.
In their life, they've always had things that were going to go wrong, or have gone wrong. So what happens is when they got older, they just assumed it was going to go wrong. When they set up their first business, they went, I'm going to set this up, but it probably won't work. How can you go into a business like that?
Of course, yeah.
But it's because everything has gone wrong previously.
You have to
correct.
frame them. Right.
They're already framed. Their mind is already wired to go wrong. So again, we had to work at resetting that. And they had so much potential in their field.
Okay.
It took a lot of work and a huge amount of hours to release that potential because it was already preconditioned that things were going to go wrong. But what the brain's doing is it's protecting the person by saying things are going to go wrong. So when things did start to potentially go wrong, they're already protected. Oh, I knew it was going to happen anyway. It's like a protection mechanism.
Oh, I see.
But what you've got to do is go, you know what? I'm going to aim to get it right.
Get uncomfortable a bit.
Correct. You've got to get really uncomfortable. So the most important thing is how we rewire that and how we rewire the brain to go and do that.
So then how would you say, this leads me actually to my next question. Obviously that's a lot more, you know, it's a lot difficult than it said, right? So what would you say on emotions that get in the way when you're trying to maintain that positive mindset?
Emotions get in the way all the time with everything.
Yeah.
We have, you know, if I turn around to most people, and most people could do this on video now, if I turn around to you and say, give me 5 emotions that you go through, will you tell me, Tima, give me 5 emotions that you go through during the day?
Ooh, positivity, I'd say, at the start. It will probably lead on to a bit of ambition, bit of boredom if things are getting a bit slow, a bit of anxiety, make sure my day's leading up going to the right way, and then finally probably a bit of satisfaction, relief that it's over. Okay,
so the irony there is you actually started with a positive.
Okay.
I can pretty much guarantee 9 out of 10 people, if I said go give me 5 emotions throughout the day, they will start with a negative. So the first thing I would say is negative emotions are a waste of time.
Okay.
Whether that be anger, frustration, jealousy, envy, sadness, whatever those emotions are. Because if you wind back time, try and think of a time long enough ago that it doesn't affect you anymore. So 10 years ago, when you would have had a negative emotion. Maybe you split up with a partner. Maybe a partner cheated on you. Maybe you had a bad time at work. Maybe a bad time at school. Maybe a bad time at college.
Sure.
All of those things, if you had a negative time or a negative emotion, I can guarantee when you think back at them now, the emotion's not as powerful as it was then.
Probably don't even remember what I felt back then.
Correct, exactly. So the reality is if you wound back time, you could probably go and tell yourself, don't worry about it. There's no reason to have those negative emotions. So emotion plays a massive part. But what I try and do is switch off. Now, you can't be immune to negative emotions. I totally get that. But what you've got to do is try and learn how to control them and how to switch them off.
Yeah.
And if you can just switch them off, and this might come across as a bit emotionless, is what I've said to you before, what my wife sometimes described me as. But you know, for me, negative emotions, it's just a pure waste of time. Because you wind forward 10 years and you're not gonna worry about the same things you worried about 10 years ago.
I'm with you on that one, even though 10 years ago I was 17, but I remember being 17. So you're quite an influential people, not only to, you know, your children and your family, but also the people that you work with. So how do you handle criticism and feedback? And is your mindset a massive part in that? Does it play a massive part in it?
Yeah, do you know what? First of all, criticism from a person that I don't look up to or respect, I ignore. That's irrelevant to me. Because I've got to want to take the criticism and the feedback, first of all, from that person. So I always surround myself with people that I respect and adore, because I just think that they're the people whose opinions I want. If I have, you know, someone in a bar or a pub tell me something negative about, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, of course,
I've got no respect for that person. But you know, if someone tells me in life, someone that I respect, that says, you know what, I think you did this wrong, or you should be doing that, I'll take that on board. But criticism is a good thing.
Yeah.
How
constructive, right?
It is. How can anyone expect to go through life and not be criticised? You're deluded.
Yeah.
We're unfortunately in an era where people don't want to be criticized.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's weak-minded. I don't know what it is, but
Emotions, sensitive.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's bizarre to me. But the reality is the more you get criticized in a positive way, the more you can change to become a better person.
Yeah.
So you've got to be criticized. You've got to adapt. You've got to accept failure, and it will make you far better in the long run. And you know what? Sometimes my kids might be like, Daddy, you're not spending enough time with us. You know, you're working all the time. Yes, we get provided all the financial security, but we just want you. And I'm like, you know what, kids, you're right. You know, that's a good criticism. So, I'll sit down, I'll spend more time with them, and I'll just try and learn from that. You might make a little note of it in the morning to get home early, just something, you know?
Yeah, of course. Keep yourself disciplined and held accountable, right?
Exactly.
So if we're going to take a bit of a different turn now in terms, it's still mindset, but it's more a bit personal to ourselves.
Yep.
So I want to dive into limiting beliefs, because obviously we are our biggest critics.
Yep.
So how would you say, Chris, that limiting beliefs affect your mindset?
So limiting beliefs are so powerful that it's like having a straitjacket on. And again, what I mean by that is going back to the scenario I gave you earlier, where the person that I know always had negativity in their life. So they believed that was their life. That's how life is. But you can have the flip side of that. You can actually have an upbringing that's too good. And that actual upbringing means that you don't understand when things go wrong. And there's another scenario where I spoke to someone, and her dad was such an amazing role model, like unbelievable. This guy, he provided financially, he provided security, gave great advice, always spent time with her.
Okay.
She could never hold down a relationship. And she couldn't understand why she couldn't hold down a relationship. But she couldn't hold down a relationship because the limiting belief was they had to be like her dad. No one matched up. No one matched up. So her dad was so good that, ironically, her limiting belief no one's good enough. It restricted her, and she couldn't hold down a relationship. So there's certain things that will hold you back, and they could be positive things from when you're younger or negative things from when you're younger. But limiting beliefs, you've got to break them, because your belief will overrun your mindset.
Okay, I like that story. Is interesting. It actually links to my next question that just popped up. So how would you reframe, let's say in her situation, reframe yourself to turn a negative experience into an opportunity of growth where you could walk away from it and learn from it? Yeah.
So again, reframing is key. And one great thing, when I was in my early 20s and I first got into sales, I got taught reframing. I actually flew out to the States, and I did this seminar with this one trainer. He was brilliant, and the way he described reframing to me is that he shook my hand, and you shake your hand, and then you twisted it up their back, and you just lead them to where you want to go, and that visually stuck with me.
Controlling them.
Yeah, exactly. But the way he reframed was brilliant. And I'll give you an example to how we did it in sales back then.
Yeah.
The way he described it was someone phones up for an investment or a property, whatever it may be, and they say that they want to get an investment because they want to get their kids university funds, or they want to get their kids into uni. They want a second home for their kids, whatever it may be. And eventually it gets down the line and they turn around and say no.
Okay.
And you're like, no problem. I'm just not ready for it. The way that he then reframed it, he said, can you afford not to? And you start to question. He said, if you don't do this, and you won't get the kids' university funds, what is your money going to be doing sat in that particular account?
Yeah. And
we had one guy that was also turned around and said that he's getting charged a 6% fee. This was a guy, he was overseas. I'm going to get charged a 6% fee to transfer it from where he was into the UK.
Okay.
So we reframed that and we said, yes, you might be paying a 6% fee, but if you also thought that you're going to cost yourself 6% in the money that you're going to lose by not getting any interest on your money. And so there's just subtle ways of reframing, but you not only reframe other people, you've got to reframe your own mindset. Yeah. And if you reframe your own mindset and the way you take an outlook on life, there's no limit to what you can achieve.
Oh, wow. It's really interesting the way you're articulating it, because it sounds as though that, I mean, I could be wrong, but the reframing leads on, or it stems from fear. So how would you say that fear plays into your mindset?
Yeah, fear can hold you back, but also fear can motivate you. It's just how you use it. So some people are restricted by fear. And what I mean by that is some people will never set up a business. They will never try and achieve anything outside of their comfort zone because they're fear of failure.
Okay.
However, sometimes when you're in it and you've done it and you've set up your own business, the fear of failure should also motivate you. So for me, the fear of failure is really a powerful motivator. I want to be the best. I want to succeed. I want to prove people wrong. And the fear of failure is one of my biggest motivators. So I use fear to motivate me.
Okay.
Whereas actually fear can be so restrictive that people don't even get off the couch to start. Basically, and you can have that with sports stars. You know, I had one person that I worked with, and she basically always had in her head, and I don't know where this stemmed from. I do know where it stemmed from. We had to work a lot on it, but at the time I didn't understand. She said, "I always say I'm going to finish second," and we're like, "Okay, why do you think that?" And she couldn't work it out. Yeah, we went back years to understand, and it was drummed into her from an early age, where you're second best to a sibling. So this came on, a fear of finishing second, and she was in a race and she was winning the race, which she should never have lost, but she comes second. And she said it was suddenly kicked in her head, I shouldn't be winning this. And she cramped up. And in her particular event, that was it. She was done. And there was the fear of, the limiting fear of her finishing second just held her back. We had to do so much work to release it from this fear. But eventually... she did, and she went on to win. Oh,
amazing! Oh, good for her, whoever you are.
Yeah.
Would you say that? Would you say that your mindset has not really impact, but it impacts your relationship with others, or is it mainly just solo for yourself?
Yeah, so mindset will impact your relationship, without a doubt, both in a positive and negative way.
Sure.
So I think I've already, as I explained to you, so for example, my mindset is quite tunnel vision. It's quite focused on winning. So I have to switch off when I go home, because if you go home and you've got this tunnel mindset on winning, your family think you're a bit odd. So the reality is I have to try and switch off, and that's hard sometimes to switch off from this highly energized, motivating mindset, tunnel vision, to then walk in the front door and you're a different person.
Sure.
So I have to sort of either, take a few deep breaths or give myself 10 minutes, or I create what's called like an anchor. So when I go home, when I hear when the door goes, that's it. I have to switch into kind of a bit more of a normal mode.
I've heard that phrase before.
Yeah. So you have to create like a bit of an anchor. And then the opposite is the moment you leave, you've got to become a certain type of person when you're in work or you're in the sports field, whatever it may be. Mindset can sometimes get in the way of relationships. And I think that if you want to be the best at something, you will tend to find a lot of the top CEOs, a lot of the top sports stars have all made personal sacrifices in their relationships. I won't go into detail on a lot of who those sports stars are, but if you look at how their relationships fared, and if they got divorced, if they sacrificed time with kids and wife and things like that, that's because they just wanted to be the very best and they had to sacrifice certain things.
Okay. But then I'm sure you agree with me that getting yourself out of that tunnel vision mindset is quite difficult. So how would you deal with people who have a fixed mindset and can't break away from that?
You can change your mindset. There's no way that someone is so fixed and so fixated on a certain mindset it can't change. That's not correct. You can change it. Some people will need more work to change it than others. And some people don't want to change. I think a lot of people who say, I can't change, that's not because they can't, it's because they don't want to. It's because they're content and they're happy with their particular mindset, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with having a fixated mindset on one particular goal or tunnel vision, and especially if you're at top of your field. However, what you've got to realise is that if that is your mindset and you're top of your field, there's going to be certain sacrifices that you're going to make, whether that be personal relationships. And there's a lot of certain sports stars who are deemed as being miserable or moody, but that's not the case. They're just in a certain mindset when they're performing. It's their job. So they're in a certain tunnel vision, certain mindset. But, the reality is that you've got to want to change, but you can definitely change the mindset. You can create triggers, you can create switches, but some don't want to, which is fine.
Fair enough. Each to their own, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that we spoke a bit about relationships, right? But would you say that in terms of diverting and, building relationships with people who aren't your family, is it a difficult thing to do if, I don't know, they don't have an anchor, they don't have a trigger point, or is it something that they can learn from you and you can guide them through it?
depends on who they are. You can create relationships with anyone. And what I typically say to people is that the more you listen, and we covered this on a previous podcast, videocast, but the more you listen to people, the more you can understand them.
Yeah,
that's the key for me. Is when you're going to a relationship. I mean, let's say that you go on a date, for example. You know, you're not going to talk for the whole time, and the other person doesn't talk. That wouldn't be any kind of date at all.
Yeah.
So the more you listen, the more you can sort of go into that other person's world.
Fair enough.
Is what I would say. So even if you are top of the game, whatever that game is, whatever your field is, as I say, whether it's a top CEO of a company or a sports person, doesn't matter. But you can switch off. You've got to switch off. You cannot have that energy burning all the time, because it takes a lot of energy to be the best.
Yeah, it's true.
So sometimes, you know, for example, if I go home, the last thing sometimes I want to be asked is, "What did you do at work today?" For me, I don't want to relive.
Of course.
that. I don't want to relive that, because I gave a lot of energy at work, and and your battery gets drained. So what you do is you just want to then switch off and just be with the family and do family things. So for me, talking about work, I'm kind of then reliving it.
Yeah.
You know, and I going back to top CEOs or top sports stars, the last thing that they want to do when they get off the field is go, "How'd it go? Let's talk through the shots." Like, you know, I'm done. I'm spent energy wise. So yeah, you can 100% do it, but it's got to be the want that comes from you to say, yeah, I want to be a different guy or a different girl when I'm switching into these other relationships. Okay.
So I know we covered this a bit more, so I won't go into too much detail. We spoke a bit about yourself rising up into your career. I know you do a lot of work with CEOs as well. Yep. So would you say that workaholism hinders true success, or it doesn't really have an effect?
No, I think if you want to be successful, and this depends on how you define success, but if you want to be truly top of your field, you've got to be a workaholic, in my opinion. I think work beats talent, hands down.
Answer.
What's that?
I like that answer, because I was sitting there thinking, oh no, he's going to say don't be a workaholic, and I'm a massive workaholic.
No, I think, you know, if you want to be top of your field, you've got to be a workaholic, because work beats talent. You can be the talented person in the world. If you've got no work ethic, forget it. It's not going to work for you. And the irony is, the workaholics achieve, but like we said before, they also have sacrifices to make.
Yes.
Whether that be at home, relationships, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I think, again, I've said this before, if you do things in the right order, and you get it right, there's a time and a place for everything. And there was a great analogy that I saw not too long ago, and he described it, and I thought this was perfect actually. He described it as when he used to do triathlons. He's everyone flapping in that, you know, trying to get ahead of the curve at the start, you know, in the water, because you do the swim first, etc.
Yeah.
And the way he described it is that's him in his 20s. You know, everyone's trying to get ahead. But once you get a bit of space between you and your opponents, then you've got time to think and do your thing. And that description of what it's like in the real world is great. But if you do things in the wrong order and you're doing that, you know, the flapping, trying to get ahead in your 40s, because I know people that have had kids in their, you know, early 20s and they've done it in that order. It's really tough. And on paper, you see two different people. They've got the same things in life, but one person did it so much harder because they just did it in the wrong order. I think if you do things in the right order, you're going to be on the right track.
Amazing. Well, unfortunately, this is the last question. It's been great speaking with you, but I always like to end these episodes on a light-hearted note. So let's take it back to your lovely children. Yep. You've spoken a lot about motivating others around you, but let's take it back home. What advice would you give to your children now?
Oh, that's a great question. What advice would I give to my kids? The first thing I'd say is don't take life too seriously. It really isn't that serious. I give them all the normal advice as well. Things like you don't give up, and they do. You know, they do dance, they do music, they do gymnastics, and there's times when they're like, I don't really fancy going. You're like, tough, you're going. Yeah. You know, I've got a bit of a cold. Tough, you're still going. Yeah. I want to give up. Nope, you're not giving up. So all of those things, we give them. I give them all that advice. But the best advice I would give is just be yourself. Be you. Enjoy life. Don't take things too seriously, and just don't worry about anything, because everything gets sorted out in the end. That's the best advice I'd give.
I love that. Well, guys, that is the end of this episode on mindset and motivation. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Hopefully next time, we'll get some more questions answered for you guys. And until then, goodbye. you.